Corina, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Great, okay. Right, welcome to our first SAIAshare event for 2024. We trust you had a restful and rejuvenating festive season, and we wish you the very best for this new year. I am Eugene Barnard, your host for the afternoon, and I am joined today for the first time by Maria Pescini from the practice desk at SAIA. Welcome to you, Maria. Thanks for joining. We will be covering two very interesting topics today. We trust you will enjoy the hour with us. Welcome behind the scenes to Corina Gibson from ECPD and to Marlene van Nieuwenhuizen from SAIA. We invite you to post questions or comments in the questions box during the presentations. In session 2, Dr. Edna Perez is bound to intrigue you with a presentation on the amazing Coromandel. But first, I'm privileged to introduce you to two non-architect guests, Alrita Groenewald and Susan Marie Oret. Alrita Groenewald, the MD of Word for Word Marketing, is a dynamic leader with an extensive marketing and events management background. She played a pivotal role in the successful launch and ongoing marketing of Woodlands Boulevard in Pretoria. Alrita started her career as a membership coordinator at the renowned Two Oceans Aquarium in Cape Town before being promoted to tourism manager. She worked as an events and promotions manager at Menlo Park Shopping Centre for lifestyle communications. Alrita holds a national public relations diploma, which she obtained from Tshwane University of Technology in 1997. Alrita is joined this afternoon by Susan Marie Oret. Susan Marie, after obtaining a National Public Relations Diploma from Tshwane University of Technology, Susan Marie started her career as retail manager at the Wooltrue Group in 1996. With a passion for sharing knowledge, she became a lecturer at Oakfields College, specializing in marketing, events, and communications. In 2000, Susan Marie managed the public relations portfolio for lifestyle communications, specifically overseeing the popular Menlo Park Shopping Centre. In 2007, she was promoted to portfolio manager and focused on national special events and promotions. Recognized for her extensive and strategic mindset, Susan Marie joined Word for Word Marketing in 2009 as a marketing executive. Alrita and Susan Marie are going to address the topic Mall Magic, how the design of a mall tricks our senses into spending more time and money. Over to you, Alrita and Susan Marie.
Thank you very much, Eugene, and thank you very much for the opportunity. For those of you who are not familiar with Word for Word Marketing, just briefly, we've been going for almost 18 years and have been joined with various redevelopment teams and some of the architects we've met over the years, and we have worked closely together with some of our colleagues on close to 60 redevelopments and launches of shopping centres over the past 18 years. We've worked abroad and working currently nationally, and we are delighted to share some thoughts of how marketing and the architects can come together and make our shoppers dwell longer. I think that's the ultimate objective. When building a shopping centre, it's actually not to build a beautiful building. Apparently, it's to make money. So we are going to talk about briefly a shopper journey and the user-centered design aspect of that, and why it's important to keep people dwelling longer.
The marketing part already starts well in advance. We need to grab the shopper's attention. We need to entice them to get to the shopping center, and then they arrive. So our first point of contact is the arrival. And remember, our main focus is absolutely to get someone off their couch. I mean, let's face it, we are competing against online shopping and many other forms of shopping. And how do we get them to a shopping center, and how do we get them to dwell a bit longer? So first point of contact and setting the tone will be the arrival at the shopping center. And there we look, it's the building design. It is the logos on the building. Is it visible? Is it colorful? Does it grab the attention? Just to name a few, you've got a few bullets there on your screens now. Boom communication, usually becoming non-GLA income for our landlords. But how do we bring it in? We know they're going to ask for it. Parking rate signage. People need to pay for the parking. They need to choose between open parking and covered parking. So all of these, the entrance, giant letters, sculptures, props, it sets the tone of the arrival at the shopping center. And then we go into the interior, and then obviously the exterior elements at the shopping center.
When we look at the interior of a shopping center, how we can get our shoppers to dwell longer would be to play on different sections of our shopping center, or from the shopper's point of view. And that's not just looking at the normal aspects like your landscape and the tiles and the furniture and the finishes, but also looking at smaller things and how that can be built into the shopping center or the design, even in the development side, to make the interior more Instagrammable at the end of the day. And it might sound frivolous, but for us, the main objective, once the shopping center is built, it would be to keep the shoppers there longer, to make that a profitable investment for the landlord. Long gone are the days that we build them and they will come. There's too many other factors that compete with the brick and mortar side of shopping. Then when we go from interior to exterior, we look at how can we keep our shoppers engaged, maybe looking at bringing in some pet-friendly aspects, and we look at the landscaping and making sure that there's a cohesiveness in the design from the arrival to the exterior to the interior, straight through, completing the whole experience basically.
Three elements we find that's usually only added afterwards, or it gets a little less attention that should be, and very important for our shoppers and for the marketing of the shopping center, would be the store directory boards. These days we're talking about touchscreens, a combination between touchscreens and static boards in a shopping center. Many moons ago, information desks were a key focus area, but these days we find that big shopping centers are moving away from information desks. But what do we have in the place of an information desk? Maybe to have the concierge there, or some friendly element for our shoppers. Tourism information is also becoming a big focus area, especially at our coastal malls, where we're trying to drive tourism feet there. And for example, car finding service, especially for our huge shopping centers. How do I get to my car again? How do I find my car? Was it visible enough where I parked, etc.? So it's not only the en route signage, the wayfinding in the center. Beautiful wayfinding signage. We know people do not read. How do we get their attention, draw their attention to the signage so that they know where we go? In marketing, we find that especially now where we develop chatbots, etc., for shopping centres, directional signage must be one of your biggest questions there is.
Okay, so we promised a bag full of tricks today, and we do hope that you find some of this useful. So the whole point of our presentation today is actually not design, it's actually dwell time. And we are after getting shoppers to dwell longer in shopping centres, but as a marketing company or specialists, we can't do that by ourselves. We need proper, beautiful architecture and clever development to do that. And that starts way before the shoppers even put their foot through the doors for the first time. So if we can increase dwell time with 1%, that results in an increase of 1.3% in sales. So on average, dwell time for shopping centres, depending on size and tenant mix, would be around 80 to 84 minutes. So if we increase the dwell time by 15 minutes for the landlord with various aspects, it can result in a 16.4% increase in sales. And then obviously we cannot compete with Wi-Fi that increases dwell time by 17%. It's almost a given. We cannot build shopping centres without looking at these facts and without including Wi-Fi.
Something very important for us at the shopping centre, which we find our shoppers do experience, would be working with the senses, visual, create visually pleasing spaces. I mean, these days it's all about being on social media. What do we have that people can stay and take photos? Aroma scenting. Oh, you all know that warm fuzzy feeling when you go to a movie and you smell the popcorn, or coffee. Coffee is a mood enhancer, or in a travel agency where you get that nice suntan lotion smell, etc. It's well known that aroma and scenting really plays a major role. Touch. Touch-worthy is important as well.
I just want to interrupt Susamari there. Just mention about the air ducts.
Oh, yes, these days it's a given, or at some shopping centres where they have the scenting built into the air ducts in the shopping centres, where they can actually change the smell or the sensation that the shoppers experience according to the mood. Let's face it, festive is a different mood to what we have in winter time. So yes, so we play with those as well. So we want people to have a full experience in the shopping centre, touching, sound. Westfield research showed that sales increased by 6% with louder music, and that's due to the younger target market. So a proper sound system is of utmost importance, and that's why I get the sound engineers involved early from the beginning to get proper sound going. And that's a big issue in, actually, I want to say 90% of the shopping centres. And for example, now you've got lovely sound and you've got Taylor Swift pumping there in the aisles and your sales are going up. But what about your family rooms where a mom tries to change a nappy or to feed her child? So very important for us.
Okay.
Moving into colour. Colour plays such a major role for us in a shopping centre.
Okay. So colour is not just linked to brand recognition. Shoppers make a subconscious judgment about a retailer within 90 seconds of entering their store when it comes to colour. Almost between 60 and 90% of their first impressions are based on colour. 52% of our shoppers won't return to a specific store if they don't like the aesthetics. 93% of purchasing decisions are on visual appearance, and 85% of our customers say colour is the primary reason for purchasing a specific product. So now we say a product, or we mention appearance of a shop or aesthetics. Now replace that with the aesthetics or the interior or the finishes of the shopping center itself. We need to stress how important it is to bring in all those elements from the start. So the end user, men designing for women. I think if you look at the restroom door signage, that sort of explains the difference between men and women. But not all cubicles and restrooms are created equal when it comes to shopping centers. The men passages are always men always have to don't have to walk that far when they go to the restrooms. So women don't want to walk past the men's restrooms. Some of the designs of the restrooms are of such a nature that you can see into the men's restrooms, which creates quite awkward situations. Then we have handbag hooks, but the handbag hooks are positioned at the back of the restroom door. And it makes it very difficult for a lady to reach her handbag if it hangs at the back of the door. Rather have the handbag hook close to the toilet and at a certain level where it doesn't touch the floor. Then female versus male cubicle ratio. Before I get to the left-handed taps. Traditionally, there's about the same ratio or quantity male cubicles to female cubicles, and at the end of the day, males don't use the toilets as much as they would use a urinal, for instance. So the ratio actually would be 7 to 2. That would be the correct one. 7 female cubicles and only 2 for males, and make the restrooms for males smaller to give more space for females, because at a lot of our shopping centers, we do find that there's a backup at the restrooms because of the initial design when developing the center. And then smaller things that we can look at when we design a restroom, for instance, would be left-handed taps. And you would wonder why, because most people are right-handed, but exactly for that reason. Most ladies, as you know, we multitask. We've got a baby, a pot plant, 6 shopping bags, and it just left from the shopping trolley in our right hand at any given time. And it's much easier than to use the tap with your left hand because your dominant hand's busy. Small little details like that could make all the difference in increasing the dwell time of shoppers. Then once the layout is complete of a shopping center, for instance, I'm sure all of you are very familiar with a layout plan like that, and we then would like to sit with the architects and identify dead spots in the center. And once there's a theme and we've found the sensors and we know what the personality of the shopping center is going to be, we then work that into those dead spots and make the center come alive with its own personality. And it needs to have a seamless sort of follow through throughout the center. If you look at the top right little photograph where the doors says in yellow, indulge in life's finest, that is actually a back passage, and that's brought into the design of the shopping center to ensure that everything's seamless, everything's an experience, and we don't have to walk past empty walls and grey passage doors that can actually enhance the dwell time of shoppers.
Our pause areas are of utmost importance, and also gone are the days where we've got the luxury where we have kind of like dead space and not doing something with it. Very interesting. We found that pause areas in South Africa, like for example, Shopability, a company who does research on these kind of things, found that the benches need to be 7.5% higher overall in shopping centers, you know, at the pause areas. Something that we do need at all our pause areas would be charging stations. Everybody wants to charge a cell phone. And you get aspects like seating for introverts versus extroverts. Maybe you want to sit alone, maybe you would like to sit with other people. But it's of such importance, because you all receive those memes on your telephones where you see the gents lying asleep while the women go and shop, those kind of things. Where do people sit? Where do we have our pensioners sit and just enjoy the shopping center? Remember, dwell time. We want to keep them longer. We want to give them experience. Let's make it fun. And that's where you get to function, meeting, variety. I mean, it's the height, it's charging stations. It is everything that goes with the pause area to keep it interesting. If you look at this one, Funani is a shopping center in Singapore, and you can see the foam seating created from the logo. How interesting is that? Make it fun, make it beautiful. Left bottom, you can see your modular natural seating, which you can move around. Remember what we said about introverts versus extroverts. You can make a group, you can move it around, you can sit. It's fun, it's beautiful. And for the young crowd, give them stadium-style seating. They love to sit and watch people, and let's face it, they love to be watched. It's all about networking for our under-18s, and let's keep them occupied in our malls.
The next thing we would look at is wayfinding. So wayfinding traditionally would be those little signs that's so way up high and so tiny that most of the time we don't even recognize them. So we've touched on wayfinding, but we would like to suggest a more enlightened way of wayfinding. Funky, fun, not just using boards, but also the floor, the walls, the columns, color coding. So you'll see on as depicted here, some malls already do this, but we haven't seen this trend too much in South Africa yet. So all of these are overseas examples that we've shown you. So there's a very funky way of saying there's more seating, or the restrooms are downstairs, and that's on a dead space wall with basically picture frames, and that's lit. Or in our play area at the kids area, or where the toy stores are, or kids fashion stores are, we have that signage built into the tiles. So it's form part of the design. It's fun, it's creative, it's a color coding system, and it works well. We have also asked a few slides from our very good friend Lynette Imrie from Shopability. She's there in the left top corner, and she also showed us that signage on the floor is absolutely the way to go, because people are on their phones most of the time and they look down. We don't look up that much anymore. Using the tiles or using mosaic as part of a design to showcase where the gourmet squares located at, or using beautiful colors and paint in our undercover parking, making it fun, making it something that we're not used to, so that people actually dwell longer. Then we're going over to our restrooms and or rooms in general that we find in shopping centers.
More and more we find that there's a focus on our family rooms, the restrooms, and prayer rooms, which we need to have in the malls now. And also, once again, sometimes we get the idea that it's really an add-on afterwards. And if we do our focus groups with our shoppers, and if we do our research, it's one of the things that come out is, please give us nice areas, because why do you want people to come to your mall if you cannot cater for them? So examples we can use is, have a look at your central islands. You know, in your areas. It works well. People can stand around it. Baby changing in family rooms with a difference. One parent will be busy feeding a child, the other one will maybe be busy changing a nappy. But what do you do if you've got 3 or 4 children with you and you've got a shopping trolley, whatever? And yes, for the landlord, most of the time, these rooms do not bring in income. But it's so important because in the end, we're going back to they are staying there longer in the shopping centre.
One of the big things that the architecture and the development do for us as a marketing team would be the ambience. So making it feel like home. The minute we have that sense, it's easier to market the building and the product. So, for instance, ambience with music, like excuse me, like Susamari mentioned Westfield in the UK. Music absolutely equals turnover. Connectability. A dead phone means panic, means I need to go home. And just the 2 slides we've got here before we move on. The one is the ambience that's created with words, and these words are changed quite, I think it's changed every 3 months or so, and it's in line with what's happening in that area. It's also an overseas pick. And then on the right-hand side, this is also Singapore. You'll see if you look very closely, it says 12:44 p.m. So this is a dead wall space, and this is a time clock, and it just ever so often shimmers the next minute. So it's using clever spaces and clever ideas to create the ambience. You'll see at the top left, right, it's a charging station. So that's a dead space in the mall, also Singapore. That's a dead space which they actually created a whole platform where you can leave your phone, you can charge it, and it forms a functionality within the mall. Then in our middle slide, we actually have I'm not too sure if that will ever work in South Africa, but we've got a bike only, or a walk, or walk slowly only, or a bike lane, and this is a regular occurrence in many of the overseas shopping centres, integrating various visual / community / health / interaction components into the design to actually keep the shoppers to dwell longer. And that then brings us to another aspect of design that's actually been done for considerable long time overseas, but we haven't seen as much in South Africa yet, is biophilia. And we would love for this to be such a great focus point in some of our new developed shopping centres going forward. The biophilic design approach, as I'm sure you know, supports the feasibility of creating healthy places. And when we create healthy places, it's a restorative experience within public spaces. And that equates to dwell time being longer. So shoppers' perception of the value and quality of goods actually increases in line with the amount of greenery and vegetation within a space. So shoppers are likely to dwell longer within a store, and they are more likely to accept higher prices with certain biophilic design approaches. And of course, part of this design practice, it would be to have natural daylight or natural light, and stores and or shopping centres lit by daylight can see a significant sales boost of up to between 15 and 20%.
Okay, and then remember what we said about, in the end, we are competing against many, many forms of shopping. Why do we get people to get off their couches and come to the shopping center? And one of those is a gathering point. It's the square, it's the place to meet, it's the place to be seen, it's the place to see my friends, to take my family, to go with my children. So we are going back to the old town squares of old. So if we look at what are we doing with those spaces? Are we creating spaces for the kids to play in? Are we creating places for people to sit and to meet? We're talking about the sound, we're talking about the ambience, we're talking about the senses. We need to create these spaces for our community to be at the shopping center and to dwell longer so they can spend more money.
And then obviously a part of what we do is part of the team as marketers and developers and architects is to get the community to buy into the beautiful shopping centers that's being built. So one of the examples that we got from Shopability was the project that they did at Rustenburg Mall. It's the Moorman and Twin City development. And there they actually used a local artist, Sonwabo Balanfia. Apologize if the pronunciation is not right. And he actually captured the vibe of Rustenburg, and those images were used as decor throughout the shopping center and incorporated into the decor. But not just using local artists, but also going to an international or multidisciplinary artists like Dan Van Dale. And if you look at the dead space lit up on the right-hand corner in yellow, or just to the left of the lady with the lemons in her hair, that's really taking a dead space and making it into a wow factor for shoppers to ultimately dwell longer. And that's part of the architectural vision for a shopping center. Another option is people had to write in or participate and submit their artwork within the community. And you can see this, it's from school children to students to moms and locals. And these artworks were then incorporated into the design of the shopping mall, as showcased here in Merino Mall. But to do something like this, you can't do this a month before the shopping center opens. This is a long process. So sometimes we get involved 6 to 8 months before the mall is even built. For exactly this reason, for us to get the community involved, for us to provide valuable information to the development team to incorporate into design and the architecture. The last one is the greenery. So the greenery is in Polokwane. It's an 11 square meter shopping center. It's very small. It's a Moorman Group development. And it launched last year, October. It was done by Kitchen Sink. And here, if you look at the signage, almost there, that's in one of the passageways to the toilets. Look at the signage. It's fun. It makes you not even realize you're walking into a passage of forever. And keeping signage fun and quirky. It doesn't have to be tacky, but quirky meant to the left, women are always right. I love the sign, actually. Want to put that up into my in my household. And then if you look at the welcome sign in the middle, we don't have to do a welcome sign on top. We can work it into the floor and the column. So this must be the place. Look at the mosaic. Once again, looking at texture, using columns, using the floor, using different fonts. We know that's a design absolute faux pas. But at the end of the day, signage on the floor is the way to go. And using different textures and keeping it fun and quirky is absolutely at the order of the day.
And then we've got our men to the left and women always right, and the kids control the wallet. Let's keep the kids happy in the shopping center. In the end, pester power must be one of the most powerful marketing tools we have. And if we just look at some of these examples here, in the top, you can see it was a pillar. What did they do? They just added those other elements, making it nice. I mean, you have to use the pillar. Let's have some fun with the pillar. You can see just below that one there, it looks like one of those interactive games. That's close to a baby changing facility. While the parents are busy changing nappies and looking after the babies, the other kids can entertain themselves and stay close by. Look at your left-hand side. That was absolutely a dead wall. And change it into something interactive. And this actually changed that whole mall's dynamic, creating this vibey space, and the dwell time increased there. You know, Woodlands Boulevard there at the bottom, it's that interactive kids play area. At the restaurants, why? Kids play. Parents, friends, family, whoever, caretakers, grannies, grandpas, have a coffee, have a look how the kids play, and creating once again a community place, a place to meet, a group and be together. And that takes us to our passage art, which is so important, which is linking this whole shopping center all together and plays such an important role, or could also be a passage of death in the mall. Passages of death, we have to laugh a bit because all the shopping centers do have that one dead space. And then we sit in marketing meetings or in management meetings, and everybody around the table looks at marketing and says, okay, marketing, how are you going to increase the feet in that area? And it's kind of like, oh my goodness, what can we do with this passage of death? Or, you know, we've got this ongoing joke as well. It sounds a bit like Kung Fu Panda. You know, you hear the crows in that area. Let's play with what we have. Curved lines, lighting, tiles, multi-level features, artwork at the bottom of the passages as people are looking down as they walk. That's where they look at the stage. They do not look up. They are on their phones and they sing. But just the difference in floor, the textures of the tiles, it doesn't have to be square tiles throughout the whole shopping center, making it a bit interesting. But once again, it's always difficult taking an existing shopping center and changing it and uplifting it. So it must be part of the planning. If you look at the ceilings, just a bit of a drop in a ceiling with lights. Look at the top right picture. Put in the new LED lights, and we can change it as per promotions we have in the shopping center. So yes, a lot to work with.
Thank you. So Summary, we would just like to end off to give Shopability a special mention for assisting us with some of the visuals. Shopability is an interior and an exterior innovation company that provides custom-centric, effective and innovative experience solutions. And that's our very good friend, Lynette. And that's all from us. So thank you for the time and thank you for the opportunity once again.
Great. Let's just make sure, Corina, am I audible?
You are audible.
Okay, great. Look, I'm sure that you all want me to thank Susan Marie and Alrita most sincerely. It's been a fascinating presentation. And as much as we'd like to open the floor, we've run out of time, but I thought it was much more important for us to just receive what you've been offering us than to ask questions. I'm sure there'll be an opportunity come in the future for you to join us again, where we can spend more time discussing these matters. But thank you so much, Alrita and Susan Marie. We're going to go straight into then our second session. And I'm going to ask Maria just to introduce Edna to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. With great pleasure, I'm introducing Dr. Edna Perez to you. She has a background in architecture, urbanism, writing, and academia. Having obtained a master's degree in architecture, she then worked at Studio Mass for over 6 years, focusing on urban design. She went on to pursue doctoral study at the University of Pretoria, from which she graduated in 2016. Her expertise includes, amongst others, regenerative design, urban resilience thinking, inner city development, as well as ecological urbanism. She has been lecturing part-time at the University of Pretoria School of the Built Environment since 2009. She recently joined the University of Johannesburg's Graduate School of Architecture, where she runs a unit with Dr. Finzi Saidi. She has also been involved in documenting the development of a residential case study project called Stand 47 on a digital platform for the New Order. Over to you, Dr. Perez.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate this opportunity. So everybody can see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So today I'm really thankful to have an opportunity to speak to you all and about Coromandel, which is a real passion project for me. I think most of you probably may have been aware of the book that was published in 2022, and partly because of this that I might have been invited. It was a project that really helped deepen research and knowledge about Coromandel House on Coromandel Farm, which has inspired so many architects in South Africa and beyond with this enigmatic project and this enigmatic house. It was written with Andrea Zamboni, who lives in Italy, along with additional authors Arthur Barker in South Africa, Salvatore Barba, Anna Sanseverino, and Carla Ferreira, also in Italy. But really for Andrea and I would say this project began many, many years ago, learning about Sydney Press and why he built Coromandel House on this farm in the 1970s. For me, the project began much because of the inspiration I received from Roger Fisher to explore deepening my knowledge about this house. I was introduced to Coromandel by my then boss, Pierre Swanepoel from Studio Mass, and I visited a few years after graduating, and it was a life-changing experience because I felt like an archaeologist chancing upon a ruin, and I had more questions than I had answers for. And there was so little information that I could find at that time, very little in the archives that explained what the house was about. And there were really many myths and mysteries that I was very intrigued to try and answer. I was fascinated by how a building like this could have been built in South Africa. And I was also fascinated by the impact it may have had in South African architecture. The result of this was a paper I published in the 2013 SAIAshare, and it really summarized my findings of this research. A few years later, in 2017, Andrea published an article in the Domus magazine, and this was really part of his delving into Marco Zanusso's archive in Switzerland. And for him, Coromandel House, when he saw the plan of the house, he was fascinated and intrigued, especially because this was a building that not many people who studied Zanusso were very familiar with. So he wrote this article to try and expand knowledge in Italy about Coromandel. And then came 2020 and most of our lives changed. And while the pandemic brought the world to a halt, online working really made a big break for us in putting this book together. And it's thanks to Arthur Barker that I was introduced to a daughter of Sydney Press, Suzanne Press, who you can see in green. And she's a real champion in trying to tell the story of Coromandel and bringing it to light. And through her sister Jane, which you see in blue, I was introduced to Andrea, and then the book really naturally unfolded, and through his view and my view, we were able to discover all the hidden layers that we hadn't found, and also distancing ourselves from the myths into the facts. So this was for us a very interesting time, because we saw that both of our research interests really complemented, and that's part of what I would like to share to you today, is that process and what makes Coromandel so amazing and so interesting. So we have to begin, of course, with the people who made Coromandel possible, the clients. They catalyzed this whole process, and they were Sydney Press and his wife, Victoria Press. Sydney Press was CEO of Edgar's for almost 4 decades. He really made it into a multinational fashion house that we still know of and love today. His maverick genius for business didn't just focus on Edgar's, it expanded to many other areas, into psychotherapy. He was president of the Tree Society and many other initiatives in South Africa. And he much loved the idea of cross-pollinating brilliant ideas from different parts of the world and bringing them to South Africa. His wife was an exquisite designer, and she had an eye for innovation. Victoria was an American, and she came to South Africa with a very much an international look and an international appeal. So when it came time for them to look for an architect to build a house for them in their newly acquired farm, Swagershoek in Mpumalanga, near Dalstrom and Leidenburg, they began to look abroad. They renamed their farm Coromandel, and this was to honor a purchase that they'd made, their first really significant antique purchase of a Coromandel lacquer screen. So they began to look abroad for an architect, and this was because of an article that they saw in an international architecture magazine, most likely the Architectural Forum, about a vacation home built in the mid-1960s, and the aesthetic really spoke to them. This was the house. It was called Casa Arzale, and it was built in Sardinia. At that time, Sardinia was very rural. There wasn't all this tourism that happened a few years later. And this house really functioned like a fortress. It was a house designed by the Italian architect Marco Zanuso. Marco Zanuso was born in 1916 in Milan, where he went on to study architecture at the Milan Politecnico, and where he graduated in 1939, just as the Second World War broke out in Europe. As life in Italy collapsed during the war years, work became scarce, and in a hopeful effort to look forward to life beyond the war, he became involved with Domus magazine, who under Ernesto Rogers and others published a number of conceptual forward-looking projects of how they might rebuild after the war. In this project, we see a very interesting case study, which starts to remind us in some ways of themes that we see evident in Coromandel. Just to remind you, this was done in the 1940s. So already here we start to see a play between nature, the idea of embedding a building upon tiers in the landscape, this idea of playing with the facade and shadow. But Zanuso was not limited to architecture. He was actually more famous for being a product designer. He dedicated himself to the quest of good design, whether it was at any scale, small products and large buildings. He embraced innovation and material development, and he was really preoccupied with rebuilding Italy after the war. He did this both as a prolific architect, but more visibly as a product designer. Here we see the Maggiolina lounge chair that he designed in 1947, produced by Zanotta, well into the 1970s, and also the incredible black box S201 TV. This is a fascinating, mesmerizing design where the technology is completely hidden within this beautiful slick box, this cube, which he designed with Richard Sapper, a collaborator for many years for Brion Wenger in 1969. Also in 1969, he featured in Rainer Banham's a very popular Architecture of the Well-Tempered Environment for his work on iconic factory designs, namely the Olivetti factory in Buenos Aires. His approach to architecture innovation through materials and technologies was lauded in this book. A few years before that, just as Coromandel Farm was being purchased by the presses, he was involved in lecturing and a number of product designs, but also in an architectural product that was a memorial to victims of a dam whose walls burst and flooded an entire village. And this memorial here, we also start to see the idea of blending and merging architecture within nature. In 1969 also, he wrote an article which is called The House, and here he explored very interesting topics about caverns or caves of the 21st century and cellular modules, which are also themes we will see as we start to explore the design of Coromandel House. So all of this was happening when he received this letter from Sydney Press, inviting him to travel to the southernmost part of Africa in February 1969 to visit a farm and to design a farmhouse. So quite an intriguing invitation to receive. And he took it up wholeheartedly. He loved the idea of traveling to South Africa. And upon arriving in Johannesburg, this was his first metropolitan experience of Africa. He then traveled immediately to Coromandel Farm. And at this stage on the farm, there was, other than the existing farmhouse and some other farm buildings that were there already, including a very old shed built by Italian war prisoners, we also see that he would have experienced a large stables complex designed by Stefan Arends. This is the complex here. Stefan Arends was also the designer of a house for the Press family in Sedgefield. So this very romantic yet beautifully detailed building gives us a sense of the scale of the endeavour that Sydney Press was embarking on for the farm, even at this very early stage of its development. Thanks to Sydney Press hiring David Goldblatt to take a number of photographs of the farm in its early days, we get to see in these beautiful black and white photographs a sense of the scale and the experience that Sanusa would have had at that time. Here you can see the beautiful stable project by Stefan Arends. We start to have a sense of the cattle farming that was such a pivotal part of the farm. The beautiful pine forests that were later, the pine plantations that were later substituted for a more indigenous endemic farming. We get to see and experience a sense of the family's love of horses and horse riding. And we also get to see that Sanusa traveled with Sydney Press throughout the farm and also had a little bit of time to have some fun on a bicycle with the kids. And then he happened upon exploring or discovering a very significant part of the farm, which is the Bokoni ruins. And these ruins are atop a hill on the farm. They are part of an extensive settlement which spans throughout the area. And this settlement, although they didn't know the details of the significance of these ruins archaeologically and historically, they had a sense that these were important and they were left by an ancestral lineage to a long lost time. And this significance of the stones and this idea of placemaking was taken through to Coromandel House as well. We start to see also during his first visit to South Africa that he took extensive photographs to try and find the exactly perfect location for the house on the site. So we see here various options that he was settling into, and eventually the reason for this was that it had to be a house that didn't dominate the landscape but was integrated within the landscape, which was such a vast and impressive environment. Sydney Press and Marco Zanusso's interaction and collaboration along with Victoria Press happened mostly through correspondence and a few visits that Zanusso managed to make to South Africa and a few visits that the press has managed to take to Italy and to London and Europe. So in one of his first visits to South Africa later that year, they reviewed the plans. And thankfully, due to the correspondence being on paper and being very well documented by Zanusso in his archive, we were able to retrieve all this material as reference sources in trying to understand the chronology, the people involved, and the details of the development of the house. So this was absolutely invaluable. When Zanusso returned to South Africa, at Sydney's request, he brought along with him a landscape architect called Pietro Porcinai. He was a pioneer in Italy in designing natural gardens that were appropriate to their natural setting. This was for Sydney Press and for Victoria very important. They didn't want to have formal gardens, they wanted to have a natural garden from the start. Here we see them putting the stakes in the ground for the position of the house. Pietro Porcinai seen with a black hat on the left, Victoria Press next to him. We see Zanusso in the middle with one of the children, and we see the builder on the far right. This was a very important process for them, this interaction with the builder, Tini Buerta, who remained in the project from its start in 1969 to its completion in 1975. Again, here we see Pietro Porcinai on the right, and we see Marco Zanusso speaking with Victoria towards the left with some of the press children. Pietro Porcinai's involvement on the farm was very brief. It ended after about a year, partly due to the very difficult way of trying to design a very large landscape project from a distance and not being on the ground and having irregular communications. But Pietro Porcinai did leave a few important parts behind. He designed a master plan for the farm, which included the paddocks, it included the nursery, it included the waterways, walking routes, and also, very importantly, the idea of meandering the driveway up to the house, that you could have almost a theatrical experience as you move through the farm and then happen to discover the house. After Pietro Porcinai left, Victoria began working with Patrick Watson on a house in Inanda, and he also became involved in Coromandel. At that stage, construction was still in its early phases, and he introduced Sydney Press to Roberto Burle-Marx, who was visiting South Africa on a landscape architecture conference. He then asked Burle-Marx to prepare a plan for the house, and here significantly we see Zanusso with Burle-Marx discussing some of the ideas. But this plan was rejected by Victoria, who was not pleased by the formal solutions proposed and opted rather to continue working with Patrick Watson, which thankfully she did, because we love the legacy that was created in this landscaped architecture that merges so magnificently with nature and building that so many of us love. Even at its wildest and most untamed phase, it creates an atmosphere of intrigue and wonder. So moving on to the design. The precedent for Coromandel House, both for the architect and his clients, was certainly Casa Arzal, which they saw in that magazine. It was a vacation house for the Zanusso family, and in all respects, it was open to the air. It had a very strong connection to nature, to enjoy that time of year when they were there, and only the bedrooms were protected, while the entire house could be shut up like a fortress when they weren't there. So here we see a schematic plan of, or a conceptual plan of the house Arzale, and it really is a nucleus idea, with the four corners of the house being those most contained protected spaces, and in the central gathering place giving rise to a deep connection with the outdoors, with the open sky. And we start to see emergent ideas here for Coromandel as well. Except, of course, that Coromandel is a vast landscape with the idea of the nucleus or the cell being stretched out into the landscape, creating labyrinthine corridors and nooks and crannies like those of a cave. So you almost become drawn into this very dark and protected environment, in contrast with the very vast, bright outdoor landscape of the farm. Zanuso explored various development sketches for the facade. We see a fascination and preoccupation in the evolution of these sketches to break up this very long linear facade with elements that create shade, that break up the monolithic proportions almost of the walls, and to create depth in this facade. We also see the exploration of section, which is so often forgotten. And here the idea was to step the section and to follow the slope at the foot of the hill, which the house is positioned in. This idea of stepping the facade, apart from creating very interesting and dynamic spaces, also helped to root the house into the landscape in your experience of it, moving from different areas of the house into others. As the plans developed, Zanuso began to craft out niches and curves to mark thresholds between different spaces of the home, and also to mark those service areas, leading one from one part of the home to another along open plan corridors to the main bedrooms at their ends. This was a very strange and novel idea in the sequence of placemaking within a home. During the correspondence and in the archives, we also get to see these fascinating plans with a lot of annotations that were sent between the clients, so Victoria and Sydney, back to Zanuso, asking questions, suggesting things, saying, why do the doors slide? Why can't they swing? Will they be too heavy? Questions like those and preoccupations like those, which then Zanuso would meticulously answer in great detail, explaining why this or why that. And this was the resultant plan. An intriguing plan, very fascinating in its 4 wings. This was a family of 7 children plus the parents. They often invited friends to stay over. And so Zanuso contrived the idea of having a boys' wing and a girls' wing for the children, a parents' wing for Sydney and Victoria to be able to retreat into, with an office that was attached to the parents' wing where Sydney could work, which he did almost all the time while he was on the farm. His work ethic never ended. And then, of course, there was a service wing where the kitchen was situated, the laundry, and then also rooms for the staff who supported the functioning of the house. Along or between these wings were created 2 long atria, one which was filled with trees looking out towards the Bokoni ruin koppies and also waterfalls. And then on the other wing, it was filled in with a swimming pool and a pond. This is one of the final elevations that Zanuso drew, again exploring that idea of breaking up parts of the facade, the idea of creating shading from the arches, and also playing a little bit with breaking up the expansive scale of the building. And here we see a 3D printed model of the plan. And really the building starts to read much like a skeleton that's been excavated from the ground, not very much like a house that we are used to. So building this massive building, which is 1,600 square meters, took a long time. It started in 1969 and it ended in 1975. And it was arduous. The scale was a problem. The distance from anywhere was a problem. The complexity of the location from the professional team and the clients also made it so. And there were many things that had to be taken down and rebuilt according to Zanuso's instructions if it was not to his liking, which then happened. This is another one of David Goldblatt's beautiful black and white photographs documenting the farm and showing us this incredible stage in the development of the house, which here you can see already had the turfed roof. Another myth that was busted was the myth that was told that Zanuso brought Italian stonemasons along with him to build the house. This was not so. The stonemasons were actually from Rustenburg. They were miners. And during a time in which the mines were slumped, Sydney Press hired these stonemasons to help with the construction of the stone cladding on the walls. And they were shown by Zanuso what effect he wanted. He wanted the stones to be of different scales and sizes so that it appeared more natural. And this was a process that was back and forward between the clients and the architect through a number of photographs, also the selection of stone from a quarry on the farm to get just the right coloring and patination that he was looking for. And here we have an incredible photograph that Zanuso took in one of his visits when the house was almost starting to near completion, and he writes, "Interesting, even if not quite finished." And here you can see on this photograph, on the right-hand side, you can see a wall that is still standing 90 degrees to the ground, and then you see two walls that have been broken a little bit. And this was one of the examples of Zanuso getting it just right, like he wanted, in actually telling the builder to break down the walls so that they could be angled as he had in the plans and envisioned, so that also it's not so harsh the way that the walls terminate and end in the landscape. The interior itself was another beehive of activity, an incredibly technically advanced project, very complex, with all the services and ducting for heating and cooling hidden in the ceilings and on the ground, in the floor. There's a basement where all the service machinery was placed. And other interesting innovations were that through Zanuso, Sydney hired Castiglione to design a custom-made music system for the house where you could hear music in every room, and this machine could be taken to different parts of the home. And it's a great pity that this has been lost in time because it was a once-off piece that was customized for the home. Here you can see it in the living room in position, and also you can see wood-lined chairs designed by Marco Zanuso that Sydney Press in Victoria used in the home. And Victoria was the interior designer for the home. She chose all the furniture in keeping with the house. Here are some technical details of the project. And we can see here a beautiful photograph by Margaret Courtney Clark showing the relationship to nature, again here, and the final project. So today the house is owned by the Farm Workers Trust, who bought the farm from the Press family through the land reform process with the land bank. You can rent the house to stay. The Farm Trust are very much aware of the fact that the building is important and working hard to try and develop their knowledge and skills to maintain the house into the future. And it is also a house that is attracting the interest of hospitality groups to try and revive and maintain its importance into the future. Above the door to the house, we have this inscription which says Hic termina sairet, Marco Zanuso for Sydney Press, 1975. It's a quote from Virgil from the Iliad, and it means your journey has ended. For Zanuso and Press, one could say the journey ended once the house was built, but their friendship continued. Zanuso designed another building for Sydney Press, but also it has a secondary meaning. It means that you have passed a threshold. For Zanuso, this house was a threshold in his own architectural portfolio. For South Africa, this house was a threshold in the way in which we understood what it could be to design houses in different ways. And it has inspired many architects, from Studio Mass, Frankie Pappas, Drew Architects, Thomas Hoff and Partners, Mayat Hart, Nick Plume, and many others, to bring in aspects of Coromandel and interpret them into their own new forms of architecture. But for us, this quote also means that our journey has ended in this presentation, and I would like to thank you once again, and I would like to thank the following entities for the copyright of these images. And yes, now my journey ends with you. Thank you.
Well, Edna, I'm sure that we're very disappointed that your journey has ended, but what a remarkable presentation, and thank you so very, very much for sharing your passion with us. I'm sure for many of us this was quite a revelation. So, I'm sure that Alrita and Susan Marie also enjoyed it. So, colleagues, we are going to skip the Q&A session. We have a commitment to a 1 hour and 15 minute presentation event, and I want to thank you so much. Thank you very much for posting the questions, for the comments that you've sent through, and to both presenters. I can just say that comments have been most complimentary, and I'm sure that Corina would love to, or will be able to share the comments with you. So SAIAshare today just reminded me once again of the fact that there are two people who are essential and pivotal to make this program successful. On the one hand, the presenter, and on the other hand, the attendee. So I just want to thank, first of all, Alrita, Susan Marie, and Edna sincerely for putting all the effort into presenting with us and for us this afternoon. You've done a stunning job. And then to all of you who've attended, and we've had an excellent turnout today. Thank you so much for attending. It's been great hosting you, and I trust that you've enjoyed the afternoon with us. And to Maria, thank you, Maria. We did less talking than what we thought we were going to do, but it's all for the good cause. Thank you for being with us. I just then want to say that SAIAshare carries a category 1 CPD value of 0.1. Corina has confirmed that. We invite you to join us again on the first Friday of March. That's the 2nd of March, 2024. And we look forward to meeting our guest presenters. Just to tell you who they are: Rudolf Opperman, who recently retired as the technical advisor for architecture and the national building regulations. And he's going to be sharing with us just the heart of the national building regulations, and I'm sure things that we didn't realize that he's grown passionate about over the years. So join us for that. And then Tyrone Bloch from Cape Town, from the practice KLG Architects. He will be presenting the award-winning Herschel Atrium building. It was awarded, celebrated last year, I think it was, and then he will also share some other successful projects with us. So colleagues, please join us if you can on the 2nd of March. Once again, thank you so much for being here this afternoon. And then we're going to exit with another Charlie Mackesy word of encouragement. And I'm sure that you will find it as encouraging as I did when I read it. This is getting harder, sighed the boy. Then every step you take is a bigger victory. So to all of you, have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.